Transition to a new American policy on Israel and the Middle East. Israeli Prime Minister Bibi Netanyahu has wrapped up his visit to Washington, where he met with President Trump, administration officials, and congressional leaders. What can we expect in the days ahead? Well, here with us is Jonathan Bernis. He's CEO and president of Jewish Voice Ministries International. Great to have you here at CBN.
Great to be here, Gary. Thank you.
And what is your perspective on this? So this was really a significant visit. Why the first foreign leader to visit Trump at the start of his second term, the Prime Minister of Israel?
Yeah, I think that we saw this in the first administration. Israel's front and center for President Trump. And I think it's a mixed bag, actually. We'll see what happens in the days ahead. And Israel's really divided about this because on the one hand, and just going back to the hostage exchange, it's not a hostage exchange. It's a terrorist versus hostage exchange. And the ratio was 35 to 1, which is outrageous. And so you have a
Why does Israel do that? 35 to 1.
Two reasons on this time around. Yeah. One, of course, they want their hostages back, and they value life deeply. And so, yeah, Israel's been demanding the hostages home. There's been a great outcry for the return of the hostages. And they've done this a number of times where it's always been outweighted. But the returning hostages, the returning terrorists that were responsible for killing thousands of Jewish people.
Why would they do that, Rabbi? I mean, think about this. I mean, they're jeopardizing the safety of the entire nation to get back just a few people.
Right. And on the one hand, Israel's happy to have the hostages home, but the price was too high. I think the other reason is the pressure that the Trump administration has put on Israel for the hostage exchange. And it began President Trump's with his inauguration, the return.
He wanted a deal.
He wanted a deal. And my concern is that although he's committed to Israel's protection, Israel's safety, security, he also wants to push a two-state solution. And I think this is the pressure on Netanyahu. If you look at the backstory on the hostage exchange, intense pressure was put on Prime Minister Netanyahu for this exchange. The envoy that was sent by Trump demanded a meeting on Shabbat, which is very uncharacteristic. Netanyahu gave in, and the pressure was so intense that Netanyahu accepted it. And of course, it was an unreasonable deal. Unreasonable.
And a two-state solution. I mean, they had a two-state. Gaza was like a separate state. Israel hadn't occupied that for 20 years. They had their own administration there, and look what happened.
Yeah, it failed. 63% of Israelis do not want a two-state solution, and that's up significantly since October 7th. Before October 7th, it was pretty much divided down the middle, and now 63%, and it's growing, saying, no, we can't trust the Palestinians. Look at Gaza. Gaza is a blueprint for what happens when land is given back, land is given over. They were given a beautiful area with Gaza. There were luxury hotels, great agricultural area, and look what they did. They tore down everything, built missile silos, and used it as a base of attack against Israel.
So what next? What do you see God doing there now?
That's a great question. When we look at Scripture, there's conflict. Prophetically, there's ongoing conflict, and it gets worse and worse and worse. We may have an era, though, of peace. The accords that were put into place previous in the first administration will probably be reactivated, and Bibi supports that. Will support that entirely.
Saudi Arabia,
Qatar, other Arab countries. Jordan, of course, has actually under the scenes been a good friend of Israel for a long time, supportive of Israel. And I think that we'll see a return of the accords, but I don't think that Trump will be successful in a two-state solution.
Well, moving on here, how about you now? I mean, you're a walking miracle.
I am.
I've heard about what happened to you last year. You had a liver transplant surgery after having liver failure. You were in a coma.
Right.
You weren't expected to live. People prayed over you, many people. And you came out of this and you rehabilitated in 3 months rather than what was expected about 8 or more.
Right, just to walk again.
How did that happen, Jonathan?
Well, it was absolutely a miracle. The doctors didn't know if I would make it or not. But Mayo Clinic, where I had started the process, said, you're too weak to come for a transplant. And a week later, they changed. They said, we'll take you.
And that's unbelievable because
it was
takes
miraculous.
forever, years sometimes to get a liver, doesn't it?
4 days, 4 days later, after I was transported to Mayo, they found a liver for me. But immediately after I went into a coma, thousands of people started praying for me. And prayer works. Prayer works. Prayer works.
Well, I know that you tell people that they need to be connected to a purpose bigger than their own.
Right.
I'm sure God put that on your heart through your own experience. So explain about that.
I had what I call a Garden of Gethsemane moment where I was crying out to God saying, Lord, if I'm not going to walk again, I don't want to go on. And the Lord reminded me that you have to have a greater purpose in life. I've been in ministry 40 years, and it was just a reminder that we're not our own anymore, right? That we've died to ourselves, and we're following Christ. We're following the Messiah. The old has passed away, and we have to take hold of that which God took hold of us for, right? And it was just a reminder after 40 years of ministry that I had to focus on that again. And I had to erase my why God list. I think people that are watching need to either diminish or remove their why God list since COVID.
Did you ever ask why God? Did you ever wonder?
Oh, sure I did. Sure I did.
But you didn't dwell on that.
I didn't dwell on it because I was focused on getting back to the work that God called me to after I was reminded that I had work yet to do. It wasn't my time.
You know what I say to people when they say, why God? Why did God do this? Why God? Why? And I say, instead of asking why, you need to say what? What now, God?
Yeah, how
what
true.
do you expect of me?
How true. And I there's one verse that has stuck with me, and I speak it out every day. All things work together for good for those that are called according to his purposes.
We appreciate you being here with us. Rabbi Jonathan Bernis.
It's a pleasure.
Jewish Voice Ministries International. God bless you.
You too. God bless you.